The flat was found easily enough. The aberrant guardian had sensed the direction of the conflict from far away, feeling the magic still in the atmosphere. Now it stood out like a shining beacon to him, though the energy was fading fast. He soared through the air alongside the block of flats. Seeing a broken window pass by him, he turned in the air, changing course and heading back towards it. Lorelei? Jacob pushed aside part of the broken table. The shards of wood and glass were everywhere. Reuben moved gingerly, observing the scene of carnage that was the living room. What seemed like mere seconds ago, everything was neat and the atmosphere relaxed and conversational. Now it was all destroyed. Lorelei sat leaning towards one side of the sofa, now just a curled-up shivering ball. Lorelei sat leaning. Her hands were over her mouth, her knees up. She was shaking and her eyes were wide and unblinking. "Oh no," Reuben sighed wearily, walking over to her. Jacob was already sitting by her, his hand hovering over her shoulder, almost as if too cautious to touch her, almost as if he thought she might break if he did. "What's happened?" Drake whispered as Reuben bent forwards to get a better look at her, brushing her hair back from her face. "She's in shock." Drake, Reuben, and Jacob spun round at the unfamiliar voice. Jacob gasped, drawing back in fear. "Aberrant," was his first instinct. "Aberrant indeed," the guardian purred. He had been sitting just outside the broken window, holding on to the sill with apparent ease. Now he crawled into the room through the window, straightening up and surveying casually the mess and distress left by the creatures. He had been so silent, none within the room had heard him coming. "It's you," Reuben stated. "What?" Jacob exclaimed. "You know this thing?" The winged guardian took a deep and patient breath. Reuben gave a glance to Jacob and saw he was almost as tense as Lorelei now. "Hey," he clicked his fingers before Jacob's face. "Snap out of it. You need to keep it together." "Sorry," Jacob blinked, shaking himself. I'm fine." "Where is your brother?" the elder guardian named Culture demanded. "I don't know. He just left." Reuben indicated the window. "With Ebony." "Ebony?" The black guardian frowned. "Is this a person?" "She's a girl," Drake told him. "Then it must be her." The aberrant guardian mused to himself, seeming to forget for a moment that the others in the room existed. "Do you know where they went?" "No," Reuben told him flatly. "Do you know this girl well?" Culture continued. "No." "And she hasn't told you?" "Told me what? You're not making sense." Reuben felt a flicker of anger. It was like listening to someone who was talking in riddles. He forced himself to calm and decided to take a different approach. "You never told us your name." "Culture." "Culture?" Reuben scoffed. "That's a weird name." Drake gave a skeptical look but said nothing. The aberrant looked over Lorelei briefly. It seemed as if she hadn't noticed the aberrant at all. "So," Culture went on, "which one of you has used magic?" "Magic?" Jacob gasped. "How did you know?" Culture approached Lorelei, placing a hand upon her head as he surveyed her closely. "I've been a guardian for many years," he said. "I'm not a fool." "A philosopher's stone," Lucas repeated flatly. "What on earth is that?" "A philosopher's stone is an alchemical substance. It's said to be capable of turning metals into gold or silver," Ebony explained. "It can cure any illness and prolong life, as well as bringing back life." "And who can bring back life?" Lucas laughed skeptically. "I doubt even a god can do that." "I can." "Have you done it before?" "No." "Then how do you know it's possible?" She lifted her eyes to him. Dark and mysterious they were, as if holding some deep meaning that Lucas could not understand. "I just know." She crossed her arms. "Tell me, would such beings be hunting me if it were otherwise? To everyone else, I just look like a normal girl. I even fooled you, but to elder guardians, those that are experienced, some of them can sense us." "You mean there's more than one?" "Oh, yes. In fact, I think there's another one now," she said, turning away. Lucas blinked uncertainly. "What? Another one? Where?" "The park. It's just over the hill, you say." "Yeah." "Come on." Ebony beckoned joyfully. "Let's say hello to her." "Hey, wait!" Lucas ran after her, sprinting to catch up as they headed towards the lip of the hill. Ebony pulled back as they reached the top. Lucas caught her up, panting slightly. They saw the rolling fields before them stretch into large sections of woodland, and beyond that, another town, though this one was dark and dreary as it sat in the distance. Within the field before them they saw was the park, a children's playground. There was a rusty climbing frame, a slide, a seesaw, and a roundabout painted in bright colours that were now faded and chipped. The metal beneath was dark and rusted, and where the wood chippings had been was overgrown. Now there was grass here, tall and flourishing like the rest of the meadow, and on a swing in the centre of the playground, rocking gently back and forth, was a girl. She wore a simple white dress that reached down to her ankles. It was elegant and shapely, matching her long pure white hair that fell freely about her shoulders, lifting in the air as she swung back and forth on the swing. She was young, not quite 20 in age, though she looked older than Ebony. She was beautiful and slim. She had a natural look about her, and a fine, unexaggerated feminine figure. Her voice, as she sang, sailed through the air towards Ebony and Lucas, and for a moment they stopped and listened. Angels forgiven rise triumphant, gleaming and pure were greeted. Back were the people rejoiced from sorrow, demons now gone, defeated. What's she doing? Lucas asked. She's singing. The strange girl fell into silence. Come on, Ebony whispered. Let's go down to see her. Ebony led the way as they headed down the hill. Lucas followed at a few steps behind. The girl looked towards them as they drew closer, looking not in the least bit surprised to see either of them. It was as she had been expecting them. The girl dragged her feet on the ground, bringing the swing to a stop. Ebony halted a short distance from her, smiling shyly. Behind her Lucas remained, feeling suddenly like he should be giving the two girls space, feeling that there was more to this than he really understood. He thought it was wise to keep silent, and hung back to watch. That was a beautiful song, Ebony began. What's it about? The girl in white stared at Ebony for a moment with steely grey eyes, and then she smiled. It's a story of a time where angels and demons lived together, in a world that's long been forgotten. Her voice was soft and lyrical as she spoke, a soothing and beautiful melody like her singing. The demons were blinded by heaven's light, and the angels could see in the darkness the demons brought with them. She smiled then. The demons were mischievous, and the two creatures, so different from the other, found that they could not live together. The angels chased the demons away. The demons, being lazy, had not cared for their weapons. They became rusted and old. The demons could not fight back, and so were driven from the heaven the angels called home. The angels rose triumphantly and were greeted by the people, bringing them out of the darkness the demons had brought onto them, and so the demons returned to their home in darkness. Did that really happen? Ebony asked in awe. No, the white girl smiled. It's just a story. She rose from the swing. It's just a song. My name is Ebony. Yes, the girl spoke, as if she already knew. I have felt your presence here for a while now. I was wondering when I would meet you. Another philosopher's stone. She bowed her head to Ebony in a gesture of respect. My name is Crystal. That's a nice name, Ebony sighed. So is yours, Crystal replied, and I see you've brought a guardian with you, she said, looking to Lucas, acknowledging him at last. I hope he's not here to hurt us. He's not, Ebony said hastily. In fact, he's been protecting me. How very noble of you, Crystal spoke to him. She looked away before Lucas had a chance to answer, speaking now to Ebony again. But I'm afraid it's too late. Too late? Ebony repeated, looking worried now. What do you mean? We are trapped here. Can you not sense it? Ebony glanced to the meadow around them, stiffening as she suddenly noticed something she had not noticed before. You sense it, don't you? Crystal said to her. There is a net surrounding this whole town. It was placed there just for us. I don't understand, Ebony begged. What is happening? A sad look crossed Crystal's expression, and she half turned from them, avoiding their gaze. I suppose it's my fault. It was me they were after in the first place, and I've lingered here for too long because I wanted to see you. I have allowed both of us to become trapped, she sighed. But perhaps it's for the best to be caged here. I am so tired of running after all. She turned back to Ebony. You must have run into at least one of them by now. The ones who hunt us, I mean. There are two groups searching. I have, Ebony breathed. They want to hurt me. I know, but I am the one they were originally hunting. I am the one who draws their attention most. I am older. My powers stronger. She lifted her arms and indicated the meadow around her, drawing attention to something Ebony had not yet noticed. Aberrants. They surrounded the three of them, Hiding in the tall grass, peacefully they watched. Ebony saw even larger ones at a distance, some colossal, sitting on the horizon. It was almost as if they were watching over Crystal, like loving parents. They are drawn to our powers, more so now that we are together. Crystal lowered her arms, smiling. They are thought so often to be evil and sinister and dark and sinister, but I find otherwise. One of the aberrants approached her, crouching close to the ground in submission. Crystal knelt down to touch it. It was a small and scrawny-looking thing with sharp spikes protruding from its shoulders and upwards pointing horns protruding from both the heads of the aberrant. It had been hiding in the tall grass, completely concealed from view. Crystal touched their heads, loving them and petting them like one would do to a domestic dog. The aberrant chattered as if in happiness, flicking its long tail and closing its eyes contentedly. It accepted her touch graciously. Crystal chuckled lightly with joy. Straightening up again, the two heads of the aberrant bared their teeth, but it did not look to be aggressive. It looked as if they were smiling at her. The aberrant backed away, retreating to the tall grass. It lay down again in hiding, becoming near enough invisible. "That's why I've been seeing more aberrants lately," Lucas spoke up. "It's because they were following you." He spoke to Ebony. "And you," he said to Crystal. Ebony gave him a nod. "They've been following me all my life," she explained. "I can keep them away most of the time, but they've never been far away from my side." There was an insect that appeared at that moment, a dragonfly. It had emerald-faceted eyes and a mechanical body made of many different parts, like that of a ticking clock. Its wings were clear like glass. It flitted in the air, darting wildly in different directions, just as typical dragons do. Ebony sensed a sort of high intelligence about it, almost to a human level. Ebony held out her palm, and the insect landed there lightly. It was quite large in size, larger than was natural, and on closer inspection it was clear to see that it was indeed made of metal. "This is my friend," Crystal explained. "His name is Sid. He keeps me company. He is like a familiar to me." A thought struck Ebony suddenly, and faded as fast as it had come. "No," she thought, remembering Pokey sadly. "He's gone now." "He only lives because of my magic that keeps him alive," Crystal went on, speaking about the mechanical dragonfly. "If I were to die, then so would he." The dragonfly darted off again, as if sensing her dark thoughts. It was gone in an instant, to who knew where, quickly vanishing from sight. "Sid had been my friend for a long time," Crystal went on. "He keeps a lookout for me." She gasped suddenly, eyes darting over their heads and towards the direction of the town. Becoming suddenly tense and without explanation, she turned-tailed and ran, a movement smooth and graceful. Her long white hair swished, and her long white dress trailing after her as she ran. She disappeared in the trees of the forest nearby. "Where is she going?" Lucas spoke up. "She's hiding," Ebony replied. "From what?" "I don't know." It was then Ebony noticed that the aberrants were gone too, slinking away in the tall grass or fleeing into the trees as Crystal had. Even the larger ones on the horizon had vanished. Lucas glanced around nervously, perhaps at the feeling of being suddenly so alone and the fear of whatever was coming. "You say you have strong powers," Lucas began, still looking cautiously about them. "Yes," Ebony replied. "And how come you've never used them before? And why don't you try to protect yourself? Why didn't you keep back those creatures that attacked us?" "Because I can only use my own magic in very small doses. My true power lies inside," she said, touching her heart, "in a place I cannot reach." "What good is that?" "Very little, it seems," Ebony admitted. "I envy other guardians sometimes. I mean, what use is it to have this magic if you cannot even use it? How do you know you even have this magic?" "Instinct," Ebony replied. "I can feel it inside me. I know what I am. The fact that aberrants follow me is proof enough." Lucas looked past her and towards the forest Crystal was now hiding in. "If you have all this magic, then how do you use it?" "I can't," Ebony told him. "My magic can only be obtained by another after I die." "What?" "If I am killed, the Philosopher's Stone that is hidden inside me appears. It's like my very flesh is made from this property. It becomes this stone." "And how do you know this?" Lucas asked curiously. "If you have never died." Ebony turned away from him. "Because my sister, my dear sister, I watched die in the hands of guardians that hunted her. They hunted her with the same intent as those that hunt me now." Ebony cast her mind back. Regret and sorrow filled her heart. "Her body vanished," she said quietly, "leaving behind a stone. I remember seeing it. It was bright pink. She lifted her hand to her face, touching a finger to her eye. My foster parents always wanted me to hide this, back in the day before I became unseen to them. Ebony removed the contact lenses from her eyes, flicking them away, lost forever in the tall grass. I suppose there is no point in hiding them now. She turned. Lucas gasped at the sight of her taking a small step back. Her eyes now were an unnatural bright pink shade. Philosopher's stones all have eyes like these, Ebony indicated. My sister had eyes like these. It's one of the reasons she was so easily caught. Since then I've hidden them from the world. Lucas was speechless, as the information slowly began to sink in. More guardians try to hunt my kind than those that try to protect. It's a power we hold that they seek. I have no desire for such power, Lucas whispered. Then you are one of the few, Ebony replied sadly. So you've been hiding all this time? Yes, she smiled sadly. But now because of you, I'm slowly learning that the world is not such a cruel place after all. There are good people in it. 3 figures materialized into the scene at that point, as if in answer to her words. They surrounded Ebony and Lucas like 3 points of a triangle. Ebony glanced around at them. Instinctively she moved closer to Lucas, who braced himself, thinking immediately dark thoughts of attack. One of the 3, a younger girl with blue wavy hair, held a sort of orb in her hands. It's her, she said simply. Lucas placed a hand on Ebony's arm, pulling her closer to him. The other female, a woman who also with blue hair, broke her formation. Shia moved to stand with her daughter Siren, as if to show that they meant no harm. Lucas saw a potential escape route, though didn't move. Not just yet. What about this one? Indigo asked Siren, glancing at Lucas. He had light skin and pea-green eyes with black-rooted fiery red hair spiked backwards. He had 2 lines of black tattoos, each running from below his eyes, down his cheeks and down his neck and chest. He wore a hoodless black cloak covered in chains and links. He had the stance and demeanour of a born leader. These are the ones I've been seeing, the young guardian named Siren told him, clutching the orb she carried in both hands. After all this time, she said, they are finally found. Indigo flicked a section of his red hair back, placing his hands on his hips and swaying casually on the spot. Tell me, kids, what are your names? Lucas didn't answer. He just glared suspiciously, resenting being referred to as a juvenile. Okay then, tell me this, the Indigo said, speaking directly to Lucas now. Why are you sharing company with the Philosopher's Stone? Wait, Siren interrupted. She consulted the globe. The other one is nearby. What? Indigo rounded on her. Are you sure? Positive, Siren replied. Well, Indigo mumbled to himself. This certainly is interesting. Stop! Lucas had grabbed Ebony by the wrist and yanked her with him as he ran, breaking for the gap Shia had left. But Shia was there in an instant to stop them, blocking their path. She materialized herself before their very eyes by magic. Lucas backed away from her, pulling Ebony with him. They were trapped. With no hope of outrunning 3 elder guardians, they were at their mercy.